So in the beginning of the year, you can do the pretest, by the way, with a whole group. You don't have to do it one-on-one. The other things we've been doing so far are one-on-one, but this can be done with a whole group. So here's how you do it. I want you to write a story. I'm going to read a sentence to you, then I want you to write about what happens, but I want you to think about it for 1 minute. So have them think first to plan their story, okay? And then 3 minutes to write. Here's an important part. If you don't know how to spell a word, you should guess. Spelling does not count. Make that an emphasis, because otherwise, what happens if you don't know how to spell a word?
I just use the words that I knew.
Yeah, which is simpler, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And we want them to use their vocabulary, rich vocabulary. You can tell them to use big words, to use complex words, just so they know. Spelling doesn't count. Use the words you know to express it. Yes, Sally?
With primary, would you have different instructions, 1 minute to think about the story and 3 minutes to write it? Not a lot of time for primary.
Yeah, but that's all you take.
Yeah.
It's curriculum based. So in first grade, you don't expect them to write very many words. And for the most part, Sally, what we're doing here is working with older kids. All of the grantees are working with older kids here, sadly. This is not beginning. If we were beginning it, this would be far different, what I'd be asking you to do.
Okay.
Okay? I'd be asking you to do different assessments totally.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, so these are kids who've already failed to begin to read well at some point, okay? All right, so first you say think. After 60 seconds, you say begin writing. After 3 minutes, stop writing and put your pencils down. That's it, okay? You see how you can do it as a group. So that's how you collect the data. Here's how you score it. There's 2 ways to score it. Productivity, which on your yellow sheet is total words written. Right? Total words written. So you just count how many words they wrote. And then there's a readability formula called Flesch-Kincaid. How many of you have used a readability formula? Not too many. Okay. All right. The readability formula will look at how many words per sentence usually the child or the student uses, and the complexity of the vocabulary. In other words, how many polysyllabic words they use. And there's a formula that puts that together and says that in order to read at this grade level, you know, students have, this is the readability level. This is what you'll be doing to find the readability of books from 3rd grade up if you don't know what it is from the book itself, and you usually don't. So there's 2 ways to find that. You can click on this Intervention Central and type in the passage, and it'll give you the readability. You can have to select Flesch-Kincaid. There's different readability formulas. Or if you have Word, if you go to Word Options and you click on Proofing and you click on Show Readability, at the end, when you go back and save spelling and grammar, check spelling, it will also tell you what the readability level of your writing is. It's a great thing to use for your own writing, by the way. When I first started using it, I was way off the charts. It's like, this is ridiculous. So it teaches you to write at a really good level for people to understand. So do turn on readability statistics in Word, type in the passage, and then click for spelling. Once it's checked the spelling, it'll tell you what the reading grade level is. So you may have a 10th grader, and the passage that he writes, the story that he writes, might be 3.7, which is like 3rd grade, 7th month. It might be higher. It's hard to say. You do not count any misspellings. Let me tell you one thing about this, though. If there's run-on sentences, like he went to the store and then he went to church and then he went somewhere else, those are run-on sentences. You have to put a period after the first and, because otherwise it's going to look like this kid is a very prolific writer, because it'll make it a long sentence. So you put a period after the first and, he gets one compound sentence, then you take off the and you count each of the ones after that as one sentence, okay? If you do that, you will get a really good idea of their beginning level. This, by the way, I think is one of the best ways we're going to be able to show the effect of ITA, because you know they're writing constantly. They're writing and writing and writing, and because they're writing, their writing is becoming more complex, and it will show up by the end of the year if they've had time.
They're gamers, so for them to be putting this in and doing their proofing, they love it. And so they really start playing with language.
Peggy is talking about what we've done as some of the graduate students have done as their research project. For example, one writing teacher at the high school level had 6 writing classes. Can you imagine teaching composition for 6 weeks to 6 writing classes at the high school level? She did. She taught all 6 classes the same writing unit, and in 3 of the classes she taught them to use the readability formula to check where their writing was at. And the other 3, you know, the usual teaching. There was no question that by the end, those who had been able to check their own readability and know and learn that if you make more complex sentences and if you make bigger words, your writing is going to go up, really did show that. In our Countdown to College program that Edith and I do at St. Mary's, in writing the first year, I had the students, these are students who are, for the most part, second language learners, Latino students from urban areas or African American students, and they used this readability formula, and they loved it. In just 2 weeks, their ability to write more complex sentences, use larger vocabulary was very evident. So it can be used as a teaching tool also. We're using it right now as an assessment, pre and post, but for those of you who are working with older kids, do use it as a teaching tool.
Well, and I just want to reiterate on that, but not knowing about this show readability statistics is the AP classes, watching them write their papers, was really interesting how those kids knew to start typing their paper and then they have the thesaurus open. So when they come to their everyday word, they go to the thesaurus and use that bigger word and plug it in. And I was just in awe how they, you know, have all these windows open and they're looking for these words to make it.
By the way, that reminds me of another thing. All of your projects have Franklin speaking spellers, and you use them primarily to go from spelling by sound in ITA to what the real word is. You can also use those for vocabulary. However, the definitions very often use a different derivation of the same word. So it doesn't really help. And what we've learned to do is, with our students, is to say, go to the thesaurus in the Franklin. So if you don't know what pusillanimous is, hit thesaurus. And you'll find out whether I'm giving you a compliment or a nasty remark. I won't tell you. You can find it out. But look at the thesaurus, and that will tell you what the word actually means. So the Franklins can be used both to go from sound to spelling and from the actual word on the page to what it means. They're wonderful tools. Wonderful. Okay? So you know how to do the writing CBA, 3 minutes of writing, 1 minute of planning, okay? And you understand why. Yeah. Well, you wouldn't do it till the end of first grade anyway. And by then you would get some kids in 3 minutes writing a few sentences. Okay? Yes?
How do you spell that word?
Pusillanimous?
Yes.
Try your Franklin. Pusillanimous.
Oh, that was good.
Edith's getting it for you. Yeah, it is on one of them, isn't it?
Oh, is it?
So Edith, did you find out if it's compliment or?
There you go.
It's not a compliment. It's sort of like calling you a lily-livered coward.
Cowardly?
Cowardly. Yep.